This is KPPQ-LP Ventura, 104.1 FM, and we're in the Women's Room, where we appreciate and support each other. I'm your host, Kathleen Good. I am so honored to have as our guest today 44th District Assembly Member Jacqui Irwin. The former council member and mayor of Thousand Oaks, she has been an assembly member since 2014. Hi, Miss Irwin.
It's wonderful to be here this morning.
Thank you. I'm so honored to have you here. I attended one of your workshops for women last year titled Women Enacting Change, and I was so impressed that I wanted to know more about you and ways in which you and your office are working to encourage women and girls to get a seat at the table in the workplace and in government. But since we're here in the women's room, we'd like to ask you some questions about what it's like to be a woman holding public office. Now, you've been a city planner, a city council member, as well as mayor before being elected as an assembly member. I wonder what motivated you to run for office?
Well, I never had the long-term intention to run for office. I have my training. I have a systems engineering degree, and I worked as an engineer. And after my kids were born, I ended up stopping with work and getting very involved with the community and staying home with my children.
Oh.
And so I worked at the schools. I did PTA. I did after-school enrichment programs. And then my sons played football, and I ended up as the president of the youth football organization. So I looked at the fields at the high school, and I thought, oh my gosh, how can children be playing in these conditions? And I went to the city council and a city council member and asked if there was any funding for the schools. And he said, well, get a group together and come and ask us. So I worked with 3 high schools and hundreds of kids to go to the city council and ask for money to improve the fields and tracks and stands at the 3 schools in the Conejo Valley. And the city council gave us $2 million.
Oh, my gosh.
So, and the city council member thought I was a very good community organizer and suggested that I run for city council.
Oh.
So I spent a year on the planning commission, and then I put my hat in the ring and started knocking on doors and raising money, and ended up knocking off an incumbent and getting a spot on the Thousand Oaks Council.
Wow. What a story. So it all started by getting involved in your community.
I think that the best local officials are usually the ones that get their start in the community, whether they're doing PTA or working to support a nonprofit or sitting on a board for the city. But people that really have a deep passion for their community are the best people to serve in local government.
Well, that's just a great story. Thank you. What did you learn from each of your prior jobs that helped you succeed and take on public office? Like mom, like systems engineer, which I'm dying to find out what is a systems engineer.
A systems engineer looks at the entire system. And so I have an engineering degree. I think the thing that you get out of a training like that is logic and making sure to deeply analyze the issues that are coming forward. My staff knows that I need to have lots of information on every bill that comes forward to make sure that I make informed decisions. Engineers tend to be very binary. It's all, black or white. And as a politician, I've had to get used to that because there's the gray area in there. There's the right answer, and then you also have to think about the politics. So
right.
It's
all the things surrounding that right answer.
Exactly. So we don't have that many people with a science background in the legislature right now, and I think that we can always use a few more people that think in that way. We make our best decisions when we have a variety, everybody comes from a different background and brings their own perspective to the issues that are brought in front of us.
Oh, wow. That's impressive. So why did you choose engineering? I'm just curious. That would never have been something I would have chosen.
My dad was an engineer.
Oh.
He he was in. My parents are both immigrants, and he worked as an engineer in the aerospace industry. He had 3 daughters, and back in the day, nobody really thought, or very few women thought about going into engineering. And he wanted at least one of his children to be an engineer. So when I was uncertain what I wanted to do in college, he suggested, hey, just be an engineer. You can do anything you want with an engineering degree.
How wonderful.
So I was a little reluctant at first. I thought I didn't have the capacity, but I was able to get through school, and then worked at the Applied Physics Lab and at Johns Hopkins University, and then worked for Teledyne Systems Company. So it was really my dad that put me in that direction.
Oh, wow.
But now when I see what the tremendous opportunities are for women in the STEM fields, I really think it's so important to expose young girls by probably middle school to all the opportunities that are available, to let them know early on that they have the ability to do it. Because studies have shown if you don't expose women early on, they tend to avoid that field, thinking that they don't have the ability. And there are tremendous opportunities. The STEM field needs many more diverse inputs.
Uh-huh.
And in addition, it's an incredible way to bridge that income gap that we see between men and women, because these tend to be very high-paying jobs. So if you have the aptitude for it, I certainly hope that a young woman considers going in that in that direction, in the STEM direction.
Yeah, I certainly wish that had been around when I went to school, because I was not very good in either arithmetic or math, and I was told by the principal, it doesn't matter, you're a girl, which is really unfortunate, because actually I did understand mathematical concepts really well. I was just terrible at arithmetic. I mean, I'd make mistakes adding, stuff like that. But, it just would have been really helpful at that time.
I think many of us, when we were younger, were told that girls are not good at math.
Yeah.
And so what ends up happening is, if you don't have the self-confidence to do math, then it kind of proves itself to be true. And what I tell people is that I was put in, my counselor put me in calculus in 12th grade, and I thought, I absolutely cannot do that. I'm a girl. I've reached my capacity. And the first semester I had a C in math, and then my dad said, "What is this about?" And he said, "Girls are just as good as boys at anything."
What a great dad!
Yeah. Well, my parents were both extremely supportive, and at that point I realized if you think that you're going to fail, you are going to fail. So a lot of the issues with females in math is just self-confidence. Okay, it's hard. Work harder at it. You can do it.
Right.
But that's why I think early exposure is so important.
Oh, good. Well, I'm glad you're behind that. As I come from a background of education, so I heartily agree. Now, you were an All-American swimmer. What did this bring to your repertoire of skills and talents, and have you been able to use that background?
Just a little background on the swimming. It's I was at Taft High School in the Valley when I was growing up, and as a 10th grader, I had to swim on the boys' team because there wasn't a girls' team.
Oh, good.
So, but you can do that when you're a 10th grader, but when you have to move up to junior varsity or varsity, it's not really fair to swim against those bigger boys. So I went every day for 6 months straight to the assistant principal and asked for a girls' swim team. And at the end, I think I just wore him out. And the next year, we ended up with a girls' swim team. And I was on a relay that year that won city finals. And then the following year, we won again. One year, we won the 200 medley, and the next year, the 400 free. And the reason I'm so passionate about girls having these opportunities, the opportunities that Title IX gives us, is because there are so many benefits to sports. And so young women that are involved in sports tend to have higher self-esteem. They tend to have much lower pregnancy rates. They are better students. And if you look at the number of CEOs that are women, many of them played high school or college sports. And so those characteristics that you help develop being involved in sports are truly beneficial for women, but also for young men. Learning traits like hard work pays off, and perseverance and personal sacrifice. Those are all traits that will serve you well your entire life.
Words of wisdom that you got from swimming and encouraging that principal to get a swim team. I can't believe it. You started being an assembly member at what age was that? 14?
It was about 14, yes.
Yeah. That's terrific. So do you still have a chance to swim, or is that something you do for recreation?
I was out of the water for a very long time because I swam in college, and it's really cold. But recently I'm starting to put my my toes back in the water, but I do a lot of different exercise. I like to hike. We have such a beautiful area here, and some of that is a little bit more convenient to my schedule. I do spin classes. I still encourage everybody to exercise. Up in Sacramento, I have 5 assembly members that come with me on Tuesday to spin class, and then we have another 5 that go to weightlifting on Wednesday. Because I really believe in the importance of staying fit, along with very early on encouraging kids to compete and have fun in sports.
Right, and the whole body-mind thing, it really does help you thinking, I think.
Oh, yeah. And deal with stress.
Right. I exercise every single day. So what experiences did you gain from your terms on the City Planning Commission, City Council, and the Mayor that help you with your current job as Assembly member?
When you're on the City Council, so in Ventura County, City Council is basically nonpartisan. And I think that is, has been very beneficial. Basically, you work with everybody to make your community a better place. And you try not to get involved with the partisan politics. So
terrific.
I think that's a real positive thing, that we remember that we are there for the residents. But the other thing that I have learned, which is difficult, is you have to make difficult decisions. You get input from residents, you get emails, you get phone calls, but sometimes you're making decisions that certain groups of people don't like, and that's about leadership. So those are lessons that you learn, while you're sitting on that dais and your neighbors are glaring at you because you're about to make a decision that they're not really that happy about, but you're making a decision that's for what you think is in the best interest of the entire community, not necessarily one specific group of people.
And that was your systems engineering again.
That's right.
I'm going to ask you another question before we take a break. What skills or talents should a woman who is thinking about running for office have? And what does she need to survive in the public eye?
Well, I would say the big thing is thick skin. That is definitely helpful for women. But as I mentioned before, if you are in local office, it's very important to first make sure that you've served the community in other capacities. Volunteer for a nonprofit. Volunteer for somebody else that's running. And, so be involved.
Right.
But once you decide to make that leap, you have to be persistent. You don't want to take no for a final answer. And you have to be self-confident. You have to be willing to take risks and put yourself in uncomfortable positions. It's not very easy to talk in front of a group of people that might be hostile. It's not very easy to raise money, but you have to be, like I said, persistent and strong and self-confident. It's a lonely thing to run for office. You can be surrounded by a big group of friends, but ultimately it's just you out there having to deal with the criticism, having to answer the questions. And women really need to look internally to make sure that they're ready for those challenges. Now, one of the reasons that we don't have that many women in office is because women probably look a little too long about whether they're really ready and capable to take the step on to run for office. Men think they're qualified even if they're not. That's what studies have shown. They'll put their hat in the ring without necessarily the same qualifications, and women tend to be very introspective. But I don't think it is. You have to go in wide-eyed. It's a very difficult thing to do, and many women are capable, but you should go in with your eyes wide open.
Okay, and with that advice, we'll leave it for a moment and take a station ID. This is KPPQ-LP Ventura, 104.1 FM, and we're in the Women's Room, where we appreciate and support each other. I'm your host, Kathleen Good. My guest today is Assembly Member Jacqui Irwin of the 44th District in Ventura County, and we're talking about empowering women. Okay, and we're back. So you've already answered the next question I jotted down, advice you'd give for a woman considering to run to office, and pretty much being wide-eyed and thick-skinned are the things that you recommended. So how can we nurture these skills in young girls so if they choose, they are ready to assume leadership roles?
It is, I think, our responsibility as women leaders to mentor young women and to talk to them, to encourage them. It's very important for teachers to not put any limits on these young girls. And there's a lot of leadership opportunities in the high schools also, whether you're talking about youth in government or student government or being the captain of a swim team. Those are all really great ways for girls to work on developing their leadership. But it's very hard for them to decide to take that first step if they don't see females in certain positions. And that's a bit of the problem that we have. There are not enough women in leadership positions.
So we don't have a lot of role models or mentors. I was really struck by what you said of importance of teachers not limiting girls. Can you say anything more about that? How might they do that? Well, probably not meaning to, but because of their own socialization.
It wasn't necessarily something that happened to me, but last year my Woman of the Year was Judge Michelle Castillo. And she told a story of a teacher very early on that basically told her she was going to be staying home and taking care of children, so she didn't have to work, or she didn't have to get into the hard classes. I mean, I don't know if I have the story completely straight, but along those lines of a teacher sort of, I'm sure not meaning to, but really sending the wrong message to that young woman who ended up being the first Latina judge here in Ventura County. So you really, you really have to fight those, some of those negative messages that you get early on.
And I think sometimes fighting those negative messages firms you up in your own position of, going forward with what you want.
Look, if everything was easy, that doesn't make a leader either.
Right. Exactly.
It's the struggles that make a leader. And then it's important for those of us that are in leadership positions to set good examples. And we have a young legislators group in our office. We have interns in our office. We have very strong female role models, not just with me, but with the staff that's in the office. And this morning we took our whole female our legislators, male and female, to listen to the Supreme Court Justice, who is the epitome of a strong female role model, and they were all very impressed.
So as we're talking about this, women are disproportionately represented in government positions. So of the women who have managed to get themselves into positions of power, who is your role model or your hero?
I couldn't just name one role model, so I will have to name a few.
Okay.
I think the initial person that had the biggest impact on me was Geraldine Ferraro. Who
I met her in New York years ago.
She was outstanding, and of course, what was she like?
Well, I just talked to her for a couple of minutes. She was very perky and smart and, confident.
Well, and the first woman to be on the ticket for vice president.
Right.
So I was in college, and I'll tell you, it's a little disappointing that all these years later, we still do not have, we have not had a female on the ticket, which is disheartening.
It is.
I was very impressed with the campaign that Hillary Clinton ran. She was highly competent. Locally, there were 2 women on the city council that had come before me that I would really consider role models. Judy Lazar and Frances Prince. Frances was the first woman elected to the Thousand Oaks City Council. She was there 8 years and then went and got her law degree. Both of these women made tremendous strides in Thousand Oaks. It did really phenomenal work. And I remember meeting with Judy Lazar, who was supporting me, and I called her, and I was really upset about something that had happened on the campaign trail. I was a little weepy almost. And she said, okay, this is your one time, and that's it. And now we move forward, and you have a tough skin, and you move forward, and you just have to be tough moving as the campaign progressed.
Right.
And so those were good words. You can't feel sorry for yourself when tough things happen on the campaign trail. And then finally, our 2 female senators. California, there's a lot of areas we lack leadership, but not in the Senate. And Dianne Feinstein has been a role model for a very long time.
Love her.
We used to visit her when we were in the Capitol doing our lobbying. We wouldn't necessarily get to talk to for a long time to her, but she would take pictures, and she is just one tough woman. And then Kamala Harris. I think that she's really the future.
She is, I think, yeah.
So there, there might be a shortage of women overall, but there's not a shortage of very impressive women that represent us or have represented us.
And so good to hear about them, because we need these role models.
Absolutely.
So how do you balance political life and home life? Is that tricky?
I think it's much harder for people that have younger children. I really feel for some of my female and male colleagues that they're up in Sacramento from Monday to Thursday, and then they're trying to make sure that they spend enough time with their children. I ended up running for office right after my son left for my youngest son left for college, so that makes it a little bit easier. And I come home Thursday night, and my husband and I try to do a number of things together. But it's difficult because you're gone all week, and then on Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, I usually have a lot of activities going on. I always try to see my parents on Sunday. And you just have to make a concerted effort, and when you're home, call your friends. But that's a tough balance. But like I said, a little bit easier for me because all 3 of my kids have gone off to college and graduated.
Right. Well, thank you for your sacrifice. It is a sacrifice, I think, to be in public service. And you already started answering my next question. Do you ever have time for friends? You just said that you call them when you're home.
Yeah, we try, or in the off time, I try to hook up with as many of them as I can. But I'm also trying to be out in the county and the district as much as possible, making sure that my constituents know that I'm working for them.
Right.
So it's a lot. And I don't feel like it's a sacrifice. I feel like it's a great honor, and I really love what I do. I love that we can make a difference for people in this county.
Oh, thank you for that too. So, what challenges have you found as a woman in government, and then contrast what opportunities?
I think the women in government have some of the same challenges that women, in business have, and I've had a lot of opportunities because of my parents and going to college and being in a career where they were trying to encourage more women when I was in engineering. But we have to have a cultural change, and one of the things that we talk about is how men and women behave in group settings. And I've talked to men and women about this. When women are talking, they're often interrupted, and quite often the idea that they came up with is taken up by a man, 3 or 4 minutes later, and everybody says, "Oh, that was a great idea." And it's interesting because I've talked to very women that are very high up in technical fields, women in education, politicians, and this is a story that they all tell. And so I think it's those are definitely challenges. All men and women have to be aware of those type of kind of subtle issues where women's opinions are not necessarily listened to or not given the same weight as a man's opinion. But on the other hand, I see that there's a lot of companies, and politically there is a big push to get more women, and this is being supported by men and women. We need to have in every area, we need to have not just the token woman, but we need to have women to make sure that all different sides of issues are heard, and that we develop policy that can, from a different perspective than a male's perspective.
That's really, really interesting. While national elections are very dramatic and sometimes must-see TV, people tend to not know much about local elections, perhaps because they don't even see much local media coverage. But why is it so important for people to vote in local elections?
I think the government that touches people most is local government.
Yeah.
And if, whether you're talking about something as simple as, hey, I want a stop sign at the end of my street, or decisions that the school board is making, those decisions touch you much more than what is happening nationally in general.
Right.
And we have a kind of a lot of controversy going on with some of the issues with our local school board, and a lot of people have been engaged. You see them writing letters to the paper, and you see them on social media. Well, many of those people didn't know who their school board members were a few years ago. And so when those issues come up, I think it really strikes home that you need to pay attention in those local elections, because, is the city council managing your money correctly? Are they making decisions that are in the best interest of the council? I mean, in the best interest of the community? Is the school board making decisions that are really going to benefit all the students of the school district? Those are very important issues. So unfortunately, often I go and talk to young people, and I'll ask them, do you know who any of your council members are? And of course, they don't know any of them. They don't know who their assembly members are, but they certainly all know who the president is.
Right.
So I think it would be good if their parents have them focus, and teachers have them focus a little bit on how important local government is. Yeah,
I think that would be a good place to start. Let's go back. You mentioned the STEM programs, and you've been working with CSU Channel Islands Engineering Program. First of all, could you define for our listener what the acronym STEM stands for?
That's Science, Technology, Engineering, and Math. And there are tremendous opportunities in those fields. And as we move forward, all these areas are accelerating. So the thing that I've really been focusing on, obviously I'm, really passionate about the engineering program at Channel Islands, but the other thing that I think shows the need for people educated in these areas is my work in cybersecurity. And when we look at the numbers of people that they need in the field, we're looking at a million unfilled positions by 2020.
Oh my gosh, that's only 2 years away.
Yes, so which means that the opportunities in that field are tremendous, and the pay is high, and it's very exciting and important work. And you can look, whether you're looking in the medical field, whether you're looking in the chemical. There are a lot of issues that have to be solved, and there's a lot of work and opportunity in those STEM fields. So I think very early exposure we need that type of workforce, and it can really, like I said, close the income gap with our underrepresented minorities and with our girls if they pursue fields in the STEM area.
Okay, and our time is up. Would you please tell our guests how to contact you?
Yes, you can find me on Twitter at ASM Irwin _Irwin. You can find me on Facebook as Assemblymember Jacqui Irwin, or you can contact my district office. We have an incredible staff that are willing to work really hard to solve any problems you might have with state or local government. And the number for my district office is 805-482-1904.
Okay, well, thank you very much for being a guest. I would absolutely love to have you back again. I loved everything you said. We're going to have to end here. This is KPPQ-LP Ventura, 104.1 FM, and we're in the Women's Room, where we appreciate and support each other. I'm your host, Kathleen Good.